Welcome back to our channel. I'm Alexi, your netball bestie, and together with Jenna, this is your netball besties. This is where we deep dive into SSN game analysis and what the netball world is currently talking about. We've just finished round 7 of the Suncorp Super Netball, and we've had some more great netball, some on-court antics, baby news, and general netball speculation that we are going to dive into today. I'll also be announcing the winner of the private coaching session with an SSN player, so make sure you listen out for that. Jenna, can you break down the games and scores for us?
Yep, so game one we had Lightning versus Swifts, and Swifts won 70 to 62. Game two was Fever versus Giants. Fever won 75 to 66. For game three, we had Vixens versus Firebirds, and Vixens won 70 to 52. And for game four, we had Thunderbirds versus Mavs, and Thunderbirds took the win 66 to 59.
Now, don't forget to hit that follow button and please leave us a 5-star rating if you enjoy this episode. Every 5-star rating really helps our show, which means that we can keep improving the quality for you and eventually get exciting netball guests on the show and even have competitions and more giveaways for you. So share this episode with your netball besties and let's get started. All right, so the first game of the round was Lightning versus Swifts. I had a lot of hope for this game that this would
I
be
think we all did. Yeah.
that this would be what would finally knock Swifts off their knock the crown off their head.
Yeah,
They're
just
currently
their winning streak, undefeated.
Unfortunately, it didn't go the way that I was hoping, but let's talk about it. So we had Steph Fretwell celebrating 150 games, which is obviously such an incredible milestone. I feel like this season so far, everyone who's had like a major milestone has lost.
Yeah.
It's like a curse. Maybe it's the pressure that comes with knowing that it's like a milestone game and everyone's going to be watching you even closer. I don't know. Not only was it not a lightning win, but I would say it was probably one of Steph Fretwell's less impactful games, which I'm
Wow,
sure,
you could admit that too. Wow, I'm impressed.
hey, I'm biased, but I'm not delusional.
The line's thin.
Look, Swifts had a pretty quick momentum shift their way very early on in this game, and there wasn't that much change throughout it until the very end. We had a few controversial calls, I would say, that ended up going the Swifts' way, and that really pushed momentum towards the Swifts, and then they really just didn't let up after that. It got into the Lightning's head. There were constant errors after this point, and it just looked like a training drill for Swifts. We saw Helen Housby play an actual GA role in this game.
Yes, which was nice.
Yep, nice change.
Good to see her back.
Well, I mean, it obviously hasn't affected her leader, her net points on the
Mm.
leaderboard. She's always smashing points, but it was really nice to see her actually play a GA role in this game because that's really where she absolutely thrives. And that's where we love seeing her play her best netball is just absolutely dominating in that GA role. Even though you've got someone like Wecky under the post, it's nice to know that she can still participate as her position.
Yeah. I think it's a good show of strength as well. It shows, oh, cool, all right, you're going to double team Grace. I got it. Don't worry about it, guys, So it goes, you can't pay one more attention than the other because the other one just picks it up. So they're
Yeah,
definitely a very strong duo.
they absolutely are. And they're clearly proving that week in, week out because they've now
Mm.
beaten everyone. So let's hope that someone can finally beat them in the second half of the season. We had a very controversial call, which we will touch on a
Mhm.
bit later in detail, and that was where Housby caused a contact against Tara Hinchcliffe. We've seen slowed down footage, but honestly, we didn't need to. We saw it in the live
Yeah.
footage as well. It was very clear from a spectator point of view that that was a caused contact by Housby. That unfortunately, Tara ended up getting the penalty against her. So we will talk about that later because there's lots to talk about. And I, for one, was not thrilled about it.
A little cheeky.
Yes, very cheeky. We started with Steph and Rue, which personally I was surprised about. I did expect Kara to start with Steph. I think she is the stronger GS to start. And we saw that change come in fairly quickly because we did see that Rue was being
Mhm.
quite schooled by Clow in that
Yeah.
circle. And
I
that
thought it was a good change though, because it was evident from as soon as Kara came on, that connection her and Steph have is just solid, you know?
Yeah,
So it was a good change. It needed to happen.
absolutely. Let's talk about the fact that Steph was looking quite tired throughout this game. And I want to talk about the Maddie Turner and Steph Fretwell matchup because this is one that personally, as a Lightning fan, I dread. Every time Maddie Turner is on Steph Fretwell, she beats her. And I would say that's the only time I would say that in that regard because I actually don't think that Maddie Turner has that much of an effect on any other GA as she does on Steph Fretwell. And I don't think Steph Fretwell struggles against any other GD except for Maddie Turner. And it seems to be a history there. I have such a clear memory of the game of Swifts versus Lightning, the grand final a few years ago, where Lightning lost. And a lot of that was down to Maddie Turner's pressure on on Steph Fretwell and just shutting her out of the game, tiring her out, and affecting her accuracy, which is exactly what we saw in this game. So it was a smart move to move her to the GS position, get her breath back, get her accuracy back up, and then continue with the game. But unfortunately, at this point, the damage was done, and Swifts had such a huge, huge lead.
I think as well to Lightning's credit, I thought that I know that the biggest matchup was Irvin versus Grace, but I actually found Courtney versus Grace was the more impactful one because they have the history together internationally. And you could just see Courtney was living rent free in Grace's head. I think this is probably the first time we've seen Grace visibly rattled in a game. And we saw this through missed shots and pressure on the pass and you falling out of court. So I think to Lightning's defense credit, they did really well. But what really let them down was their attack end. Even in the post game, even Grace admitting, like, yeah, I don't think I deserved MVP. You know, like I didn't feel like I played my best. And then even in the post game conference, she didn't even want to say a word about Courtney Bruce. Give her the attention.
Yes, no, we will definitely break that down a bit further after the game analysis because I really want to talk about even what they talked about in Pivot when they brought this up, which was very interesting and what you and I were discussing about Grace Wecky's attitude after the game and why what could have potentially caused that. But I do want to point out that there was a lot of talk on social media of everyone expecting Irvin to be the right
Mm-hmm.
defender to go against Grace. And I did not think that was the case. I really was expecting them to have the rotation between the two goalkeepers, and that's exactly what ended up happening
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that they both bring very different things to
Yeah.
that goalkeeper bib. And it was kind of a combination and the constantly needing to keep Grace on her toes and changing what she was doing, which is what really rattled her.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Courtney is very good though at chipping away at you too.
Yeah, love her for that.
I wouldn't want to verse her personally ever.
Really want to point out Kara again in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I have said so many times, I think she's having the best season of her career. She is just going from strength to strength. And the fact that we saw such a clear difference in Lightning's performance when she came on and how dominant she is in that circle, she just looks like the Kara that we saw years ago that was just undefendable.
Carla's also one of those players that is like really deceiving. Like she's so light on her feet and she's so aerial. She loves being in the air, but she can muscle the best of them too. She will rip that ball in. She's very unsuspecting, which I think is a really good thing for her. It keeps her, a bit unpredictable for defenders because she's a lot
Absolutely.
tougher than she looks, really.
I really want to also talk about Tara Hinchcliffe in this game. So, over the last season, we've seen her really thriving in that GD position, although we also can see huge benefits of when Bruce also takes that bib. we have to respect Tara in the fact that she is starting in GD for a reason because she is very consistent. She always has that backup. She causes that pressure, which allows the GK to have those intercepts. But I want to just make a note of the fact that Housby had a completely perfect game. She had zero turnovers. And so, in that regard, when you look at those numbers, perhaps Tyra was not the best matchup on Housby for this game. Unfortunately, she wasn't shut out well enough for her to literally have a completely perfect game, which she shouldn't have given the contact that she caused, but that happened.
Mm.
But I think that's something to, for Lightning to look at, is that as incredible as Tara is, perhaps she wasn't the best matchup for Helen Housby.
I do want to say as well, I really did enjoy seeing Kara finally putting up some super shots in the fourth quarter, even though I was screaming at the TV probably a lot earlier in the game, thinking you need to be attacking the twos, need to be attacking the twos, to finally see her, once Steph was missing a few, to then put up the super shots. That was really good to see because it shows that she is still bringing it into her game.
The biggest momentum shift that we saw in this game was actually when Paige Hadley was taken off the court, and instantly it looked like Lightning pounced on that opportunity because one of their strongest feeders went off the court. And so Lightning went hard, the pressure went up. We saw Wecky miss 6 shots. That was
Yeah.
huge. And then on top of that, as you mentioned, we saw Kara smashing out the super shots, which then gave Steph Fretwell the confidence to take those super shots at the same time. And then we saw 6 super shots back to back on par with misses. And then they ended up bringing that deficit from 18 to 8, which is huge.
It is. And they probably could have even gotten it a little bit closer, but then that one attacking turnover of ball in the end there, that could have got them within 4. Was a bit disappointing, but I mean, it was a shame because it almost felt like it was a little too late. I really wanted to see that fight from Lightning, and even looking at the game, they have the ability to beat the Swifts. It was just their own mistakes that were letting them down.
Yeah, and credit to Hadley for being such a formidable force for Swifts to see how much their attacking end suffered without her. I think she's done an incredible job at really carrying that load since Maddie Proud, has obviously taken maternity time off and had a baby.
Yes, had a baby.
So that move about smashing out super shots was actually a really, really smart decision from Lightning, not just because it was going to, they had no chance of winning. There wasn't enough minutes on the clock to get the win, even if they did 10 super shots. But what they were doing was thinking about percentage, and which was a very smart move because as we see the ladder after Fever's win, there's literally only 0.1% between for second and third on the ladder at the moment. Second game of the round on Saturday was Fever versus Giants. Now, this is definitely a game that did not go the way that I was expecting. What about you?
Yeah, it was an interesting game, that was for sure. It got a bit tight there for a little bit.
Yes, it did. So in the first quarter, we saw Fever come out absolutely blazing with the confidence that we expected, and they quickly took a 6-1 lead in the first 5 minutes, which instantly caused Giants to call a timeout to reassess what they were doing. Giants, although they were leaning heavily on those super shots, which we see them do again and again, we actually saw Jo go off. And I don't know why she went off, but this was a change in the Giants. So we actually saw her put her warm-up training top back on instantly, and we got no answers. She didn't look injured. We didn't know what was going on. As far as I saw, even on Pivot last night, there were no answers as to why this happened. Credit to Matisse. She's a great super shot shooter. But as we've said before, there is a big difference in how that attacking end works when Jo's off the court. And it is a lot more stagnant. There's a lot more errors. And the feeders just can't find the shooters as easily. And we saw that quite clearly. In the second quarter, we saw Giants settle. There was a bit better structure, and we saw Matisse Leatherbar start to make it rain with super shots, as we love seeing her do. She had a moment where she had a step back super shot against Dehaney, who has such an incredible reach. And I love seeing shooters do a step back shot, particularly in the super shot rings over someone's reach like Dehaney was, very impressive. And then we saw in the third quarter the Giants fight back quite well and actually level the score. And this is where shit got a little bit spicy because we weren't expecting to be in this position, were we, Jenna?
No, and I definitely think what sort of contributed a bit to the shift was I thought Shanice was having a killer first. She was putting up super shots. She was having a killer first half. And I think the introduction of Olivia Wilkinson on, while I understand, Dan's, trying to get her more court time, get her more familiar with the game, because of course that's the only way she's going to build experience and confidence. Olivia comes on and it sort of makes the attacking end a bit more stagnant. She's running to the same space, other people are there. She's not quite providing as many options as you see Shanice. Like Shanice is a workhorse in her own right. She's constantly providing she's running like crazy. They're here, there, and everywhere, offering, reoffering, getting ball to Fowler. So I think that shift as well, the Giants sort of picked up. I also thought Jodie Ann Ward was doing really, really well. Yeah, when she came down with that bit of a knee tweak, she came off court heavily strapped, and I was very surprised to see her put back out on court for the fact that she couldn't even run. She was limping. My immediate thought was, oh no, why would you do that? Because now, if this is something, you've now risked it again. And then what did we see a little bit later? She landed on it again and looked like she was in a lot of pain and had to leave the court straight away. And I think they confirmed that she was going for a scan yesterday.
No, this was honestly such a hard to watch moment because
It was.
watching her come back on to start the third quarter was really great. We were like, oh, fantastic. She's fine. It wasn't as bad as what we thought. Like, she's all good. She's strapped up. They wouldn't let her back on if she wasn't okay, would they? Who was the one pushing for this? Was this Ward because she wanted to get back out there? So did she downplay how much pain she was in order to get back out there? Because at this point, it was so clear how pivotal she was in the Giants lineup, in that defense lineup, to give them a chance at this game. So perhaps that was pressure on her part. She didn't want to let the team down. She wanted to get back out there. Perhaps it was the coaching team who were pushing her because they could see that they didn't have enough depth on the bench to replace her. They did have a rookie. It was really hard to watch because you could see how desperately they wanted this win and that they could taste it. And from the Giants' perspective, that they, at this point, would have deserved it if they'd kept pushing the way that they were going. But unfortunately, seeing her limp after like a couple of minutes of being back on that court, I think everyone's heart just broke for her in that moment. Who's at fault for putting her out there? Is it her own fault for pushing herself out there, or is it the coaching team for not recognizing that this is, an injury that she's had in the past and that they should have monitored her back out there? I don't know.
I think I'd be leaning more towards a coaching decision, because at the end of the day, you could have any player being like, I want to be out there, and the coach is the one that will have the final say. But even when she came back on, you could see she just wasn't right. You could see she was in a lot of pain. And then to see her land, when she landed that second time on her knee, she yelled out in pain. And I felt so awful for her, because I really, really hope this is nothing serious, but it didn't look great either. So at this point, you'd expect, is she now going to miss a couple of weeks maybe while she's rehabbing this knee? And then what are Giants really going to do then?
Such a risky choice to put her back out there. And I think what they were talking about on Pivot is that Julie Fitzgerald has essentially conceded the entire season, is now just looking at it as an opportunity to blood the young, get the minutes on the court, and really think about Giants' future and the seasons ahead, as opposed to having any ambitions of, placing in the top 4 for this season, which, at the end of the day is probably a smart decision.
It's probably now in the best interest to sort of shift the focus, go back to playing without pressure, re-find your love for it, because I do really feel for the Giants in the sense that I can't even imagine what those change rooms probably feel like right now, and the whole morale in the club. Like, even one loss to us and we're like, oh my God, like it lingers with us for a couple days.
Kelsey Brown said that last night as well. She said it really well of when she was at Collingwood that you could essentially get yourself into that mindset of just we're going to lose. Like you play to lose and you basically convince yourself, oh no, like that was a turnover. Is this going to be another game we add to the losing tally? Just goes to show how incredibly important mindset is because we know that every single person on that court is highly capable, is highly skilled, and can win these games. They are all very capable. And the difference is literally the belief that they can do that and not allowing mistakes to completely shatter your confidence for the rest of the game.
Yeah, so I really think that the approach, if I were the coach, I would be really trying to focus on the team morale and building everyone up again and refinding the love because you still have the rest of the season, end it on somewhat of a high. You don't want to go out back to back wooden spooners again. It just wouldn't feel good.
I'm sure not the way that a coach like Julie Fitzgerald would want to end her long career, which is unfortunate. But I suppose now you've just got to look at it as, like she said, look to the future and try and leave the club in a better place when it is time to move on.
That being said, I think her contract might possibly be up at the end of the year. Do you see her re-signing?
Because Jo would need her accreditation. She'd have no experience coaching a team. Like we will see Jo when she retires go into an assistant coaching role or perhaps the shooting specialist coaching role in the team. But we're definitely not going to see Jo Harton take head coach role for an SSN team straight off the back of ending a season. That's not going to happen. But we will definitely see her added to that coaching group. But in regards to who would take the reins from Julie Fitzgerald, who knows? I mean, we've seen all of the hats thrown in the ring to replace Simone.
True. I don't think Jo Harton is going to retire until she has the next thing set up, ready to go. She's very passionate about netball, especially about the club. I definitely think she'll see herself in some sort of role there in the coaching sort of squad, like she's doing for England after she retired. But that being said, for all we know, what if she has been getting her accreditation behind the scenes?
But the coaching experience wouldn't be there. Even if she had the accreditation, like she's never been an assistant coach for an SSN team, like what we see Dylan Nexip doing now. Like she would have to earn the stripes in that sense.
But that also being said, we saw Chelsea Pittman officially retire last year, and then a month later announced she's the coach of one of the Super Netball teams. So she's gone straight from her netball career straight into coaching.
But it's not SSN.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think there's always more going on than we know. But I definitely think some choices need to be made and at Giants. And I feel for those players that are on multi-contracts until next year.
JLP, like heartbreaks for her, to be honest, because she is just so consistent. And what is so unfortunate actually is just seeing that she is at the peak of her career. She is actually living right now her best sporting days. She is playing her best netball, and it is disappointing to see that not pay off in regards to what she's actually putting on the court. But, we do see her thriving in Diamond's environment, and, so at least we get to see her there.
Yeah, exactly.
The third game of the round on Sunday was Vixens versus Firebirds. Now, first of all, we saw the Vixens absolutely winning the dresses this round. I was obsessed. Absolutely love I think it was the navy with the fuchsia pink. Gorgeous combo. Absolutely love that design. They hands down won the dresses for the round for me.
No, I really like when they take the NAIDOC designs and they make it different to what their normal style dress is. Like, I really like that.
We have Austin. She was nailing super shots, but there was a moment, I think, where one of her super shots wasn't counted because she had a foot outside off the line, which, must be very frustrating, and a bit of a coach killer in that regard. Overall, this season, Vixens have not been living up to their full potential, and the beginning half of this game really seemed to be that's how what we were going to see again. But fortunately for them, there was a bit of a turnaround. We did see Lily Graham come back in the last couple of minutes of the second quarter and absolutely smashed it. She was getting super shots. She just had full movement within that circle. And like I said to you, Jenna, I was surprised we didn't see her start this game because of just how consistent and reliable she is every single time we've seen her on the court this season. So I really think she's earned a starting bib. We actually didn't see her back on for the rest of the game because after the third quarter, there was just four in it. So this was a very tight game. But we saw Lily stay on the bench and Garvin come back out to her GS role, which was puzzling at first. Wasn't what we expected, but they did end up getting the job done and they seemed to figure out what was going wrong in that end. Vixens found their rhythm, they took control of the game, and it ended up being a solid win by the Vixens in the end.
Touching on the Kira's foot out of court, I know that we recently had all the controversy with the Super League about the super shot not being counted and whatnot, but it was really good to see that they immediately picked it up, adjusted the score, and there were that many people onto it that it was like, oh, cool, like it's done. So that was good to see that they were on it. Also, I thought it was good to see Mary playing with a lot more confidence this week, and finally the attackers were sighting her and sending her ball. I do want to say I think Ruby Bakewell-Doran had a really great game as well. She was in every contest. She was getting so many tips, but it was very disappointing that she was getting so many tips, but none of the other players were on the circle edge or nearby to help pick it up and transition it down court. I did also like the change of Abby coming in and Mary into GS in the third quarter for super shot time because they did sink some good super shots in that.
The fourth game of the round, Mavericks versus Thunderbirds. We actually saw Romelda Aiken-George playing back to form in this game, which we haven't seen for the last few rounds. She actually was leading the net points from very early on in this game. And from what I saw, she pretty much held that position at the top of the leaderboard for the vast majority of the game, if not all of the game. And Jock was very tightly behind her. I was really happy to see Romelda playing like that well again, because as we've seen so far, that seems to be such a barometer of how the Thunderbirds actually end up performing, is how reliable Romelda is that day under the post. In the second quarter, the Mavericks were again leaning into their super shots to try and claw back and stay in this game, because we did see their penalties blowing out again, which just seems to be the one most consistent thing about the Mavericks is that their penalties are going to blow out, and I'm not sure why they're not addressing that. Like, surely that is something that they are going over in their post-game analysis of what they're doing wrong. And yet, week and week again, we see the same errors happening and the same penalty count just skyrocketing through, which meant that they had a player out almost every minute of this game.
Yeah, no, this is something that I feel like we speak about consistently week in and out. Their penalty count is just astronomical. And I think this was probably the first week we started to sort of see the bit of the frustration with the coaching staff around it, because even Nicole Richer, she was saying to them, you need to stay and play. You need to stay and play. And I think, or correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was post game. Richo was interviewed and she said, at this point, they may as well just be standing in the stands. Yeah. So I think that tells me that they probably are trying to address the issue with the players. And could this maybe be the fact that the players aren't necessarily taking that feedback on court? Because we did see the heavy penalty count and then having Liv Lewis having a spell on the bench. She came back on and then she actually started to have an impact. She started to have deflections and actually be more present in the game. But it's just a tale as old as time with the defenders, and a lot of the time as well, a lot of the contacts are unnecessary or incredibly late.
It just seems like something that is so easily addressed and brought to their attention, and what they would clearly be working on in training week in and week out to adjust the timing. to adjust the contact around the body. And we do see Kim Brown specifically not adjusting a thing.
Yeah, and to be honest, I actually think she's incredibly lucky to not have been sent off for some of the hits she's given this season so far. There's been some really, because not only when it's not even like a contact, like a shove, it's like a you've knocked the player to the floor. That also poses a question, is that maybe what needs to happen? Do the umpires really need to be way more aware of it? Is that what she needs? Is that what is going to finally make her adjust to? We want to see good contesting games, but we want to see our players safe. And I think when you compared, like my favorite matchup in this game was definitely Latanya Wilson against Shimona Jock. I loved it. And when you compared the way that they were going at it, it was a lot cleaner. It was genuinely contesting for ball. That's what you want to see. You don't want to see the eye rolls and the shaking heads.
This is a big call, but I feel like at this point, she thinks she knows better. There is no way she hasn't been grilled about the amount of contacts, the late contacts, the deliberate contacts. She has such a record for it, both last season and going into this season. We see it time and time again. So at this point, she must just really think she knows what she's doing.
Possibly, and I think I would say, based off what we're seeing, I think maybe that it could be it, which is a bit disappointing, you know.
Does that make her uncoachable?
It could, and that isn't necessarily too appealing
No.
when everyone's off contract. So I would be really aware of it. I wouldn't want to personally be known as the player that's playing like that. And the fact that it's umpires calling her week in and out, her coaching staff is clearly getting visibly frustrated with it. Commentators are speaking on it. It's constantly being spoken about online. Everyone is noticing this issue. So I think a bit of maybe reflection needs to be done about
100%.
ways that you can be more impactful.
But like you said, why haven't the umpires made more of an issue of it? Because it must have been brought to their attention. This is not a new thing. She should have been had a warning. She should have been sent off. It is so consistent. Like, I mean, the amount of penalties is ridiculous.
And we even see in the New Zealand League as well, there's players being sent straight off the court for dangerous play for hits way less rough than what we're seeing in some of these SSN games. And that tells me that, you know, those umpires, they're on top of it. They're watching it, they're monitoring it, and they have player safety in mind. I think we need a little bit of that over here.
I'd love to see the umpires actually be all on the same page and all consistent across every round. That would be lovely, because we do see them cracking down on things like a footwork call
Or
or
not setting penalties.
not setting a penalty. That seems to be a huge thing they're focusing on cracking down on. But apparently consistent late contacts and dangerous play, oh, whatever.
Yeah, I think if anything deserves more attention, it's dangerous play.
Yeah, it's been an interesting development of what I guess the umpiring have decided to focus on and prioritize going forward. So hopefully that does get a bit of a look in. But also for Mavericks, like I do feel bad for them because it's not across the board. Like you have players like Sasha Glasgow who have really come into their own now. We are seeing Sasha how we used to see her. She had such a great game. What an improvement. Like her accuracy, her confidence to take those super shots. But just the way that she is on the court, we saw her as quite a little bit of a timid deer in headlights for the beginning of this season. But now look at her. She is absolutely thriving, and I love that for her.
Yeah, no, I think, well, hopefully, you know, it continues to build and we continue to see her get back. I think she's definitely on the way back to where she was. It has been good as well to see Pallavi coming on. I think when she came on there at one point, it was for the quarter two super shot time, and absolutely nailed it. That was really good to see. And at least that would give me a little bit of confidence knowing like, all right, cool, if I need a breather, it's good, you know? So there's still some stuff Mavs need to work on. In T-Bird's regard, I thought we finally saw they still obviously have a bit of a headache now that Shamira's out, but I think putting Laddie in GK was a good move. That T-Birds defensive pressure across the court that we know and love and we're used to seeing. So I feel like they're also getting back to where they were. They're finding their feet.
Because we weren't really sure about Laddie being in that GK position. We didn't
Mm.
think that that was where she was going to show how, where she would thrive. But we've been proven wrong. And obviously Tanya Obst knows better than we do. And she just needed more time to really grow in that role. And she clearly wants to. And she was incredible. She was great.
Wonderful elevation. Really love her. I love watching her play. She's really good.
Yeah, and really love seeing the connection with Tilly and Laddie growing in a completely different dynamic.
Yeah.
Like that, I imagine, a lot of learning for them as well to get used to working together and repositioning completely differently as to what they're used to. Clearly, that's getting better and better every week.
When was it? Towards the end of the game, I think Sasha Glasgow ran up to the center pass, received it at the circle, and thought, "Cool, Shimoda's on." Absolutely flogged the ball from half court and scored one of the most beautiful shots. It was such a strong pass and just bang, boom, boom through the net.
It was so good, and it was so unfortunate that when it went through, and then there was confusion, and then
Yeah,
Jock kind of had her hands on it, but then lost
yeah.
it.
Oh, it was just, oh, how funny. Put that on the highlight reel for sure.
Hopefully, we do see a bit of a turnaround for Mavs. We obviously want to see that penalty count taken control of, but really like seeing that Sasha has, come back into her strength and her confidence. And so the attacking end is really working smoother. And like you said, they've got Pallavi on the bench to come on, and then they've got two-point shooters in the last 5 minutes and that is the best kind of setup that you want. That is the ideal setup for all of the teams that are really thriving this season. They have that tall shooter, and then they have the option to switch into a double super shot threat scenario, unless you're Helen Housby and can basically do it all on your own. It is annoying how good she is. Like I'm just like, oh, I want to dislike you because you beat my team, but you're just so good.
I know, what a curse.
Let's get straight into some big headlines from the week we've just had. And there's quite a few. We've touched on a couple already, but let's just deep dive into what's been going on. There is continued speculation around who the new Vixens coach is going to be. And that's obvious because they put it in the headlines, they brought it out, they're starting the process of looking for the right person. So that is why it seems to be at the forefront of all of the questioning that we're seeing. We're seeing Nicole Richardson being questioned about it. We're seeing Dylan Nexip be questioned about it. Everyone wants to know what's going on. So Jenna, you are across this a little bit more. Tell me what you have heard so far.
Richo being questioned whether or not, she'd even chuck a hat in the ring. And she said, never say never, but she is enjoying her time at the Mavs. That to me says, oh, maybe an application has gone in. I can't see her really with the style of Vixens, but that also being said, maybe, a shift. I find it hard. I've sort of been trying to stay out of the coach debate, but like Dylan Nexip as well, I think he's great and I think he's going to be a really great coach, but I think he's had such a good, strong impact at Swifts, especially if they go on to win a premiership. I would be very surprised to see him move, which would feel like a bit too soon, but I feel like he did shut that down a little bit on Pivot, saying that he was pretty happy at Swifts.
It's actually
Yeah.
exactly what we saw Tracy Neville do. So we saw her
Yeah.
assistant coach for Thunderbirds help them get a premiership and then jump ship and go straight to head
Mm.
coach at Mavericks. It's not unheard of, but
Yeah. I know there's been other names tossed around, but I think it's still nothing concrete yet.
let's talk about the on-court antics with Helen Housby and Tara Hinchcliffe. And by that, I mean it was all on Helen. Tara did nothing wrong. We've obviously seen that the replay in slow-mo of what happened. So let me talk you through it if you haven't seen the footage. But basically, Helen deliberately leans into the shoulder of Tara Hinchcliffe, who is, making, running past her to create a contact. and she falls to the ground quite dramatically and ends up getting Tara called out for a penalty and then a turnover. So then, yeah, which is very, very frustrating from a Lightning fan point of view to see that play out and a very clear, incorrect call. And then I think what really flared the online drama was the shot of Helen's face, not only during the call, but after. And she was gleeful.
She
She,
had a tongue out,
mm,
smirk on her face.
it's the smirk. Yes. Now, I do want to point out that Helen did actually publicly apologize to Tara in the comments section of the Fox Netball Instagram account, which is where they
Did
posted
she
that
now?
video.
I've not seen that yet.
Yes. So she apologized by basically saying, oh, my bad, that was bad form. Like I was giggling because I was surprised that the call, actually went our way kind of thing. That was the general vibe. Unfortunately, it didn't do what she was probably hoping it would do, which is damper the negative commentary online because people, as a whole, no one really likes the idea of bad sportsmanship or cockiness, especially in Australian culture. And we most certainly don't like people being gleeful in like, hurting anyone or causing a contact like that. So it definitely went down like a lead balloon. Having said that, it's also just sport. And we see that in every sport, in every country, everywhere. People are going to try and get away with what they can get away with. And it's definitely not unique in that sense. I feel like I should probably say that because she's been getting like quite a lot of hate, which is also understandable. It was a pretty shitty thing to do.
There are consequences to my own actions.
Well, yes, a little bit, but and also because yes, consequences to your own actions because it was so unnecessary. She's such a dominant player. They were winning by quite a lot, and it just felt like a really unnecessary thing to do. Like I saw people in the comments saying, "Oh, she's only done this because she's not a good enough of a player to play by the actual rules," which is actually just factually incorrect. She's actually incredible. She's an incredible goal attack, one of the best we've ever seen in SSN in international history. So that's not the case, which actually just makes it even more cringy, I guess, that she did it. I don't know. Grace Weke. Now, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing that properly because I've been saying Weke, but it's Weke, I believe. So we saw her winning the MVP after this game, and she did not seem happy about it. It almost looked like she had tears in her eyes. She looked very disappointed, annoyed. We saw the post-game chat to media where she decided to highlight Irvin as the most, impactful defender against her, where I think she was deliberately not naming Bruce, probably as like a personal vendetta against that. I think
Not let her have the satisfaction.
yes, not letting her have the satisfaction. Exactly. But I think, we all have two eyes. We could see that Bruce was very clearly getting into Grace's head. And even with Dylan next had made comments about this on Pivot as well, which is exactly what we thought when we talked about it, Jenna, was that it seems that her annoyance was more at herself than anyone else. It seemed to be
Yeah.
that she has set such an incredibly high standard of her own performance, then maybe she's going to be her own worst enemy when she doesn't constantly reach perfection, which is, just a really unnecessary and silly goal to set for yourself because she's already such an incredible player. Everyone can see that she is like on a path to just being one of the greats. So you don't need to put that kind of pressure on yourself.
Yeah. I guess it's hard because, sometimes people are their own worst critics. And I guess in a sense, the whole reason that she came to SSN was because she wanted to be challenged and she wanted to improve her game. And I guess coming up against people that are going to challenge you and going to get in your head gives you opportunities to then reflect and think, all right, cool. How am I going to overcome this next time? How can I, be stronger mentally? So I think it was probably an emotional thing because I feel like this was probably the first time that so far we've actually really seen her be really challenged and it really get to her.
She needs to learn to keep those feelings a bit more to herself because all she has really done is essentially make her opponent know just how rattled she really was, just how much of an effect that really had on her. I think as we see her progress and mature, we'll see a little bit more of a reining that in and having more of, I guess, a poker face in regards to when things do get to her, because the last thing you want to do is hand on a silver platter to your opponent exactly how to piss you off.
Which, to her credit, I think she was trying to not give it the attention. It was, of course, everyone else noticing that she was visibly upset. But it doesn't help when you have so many people being like, did they get to you? Did they get to you? Did they get to you? You know? So, of course, everyone's emotions are going to be heightened right off coming off walking out of that game.
Well, I'm sure, like they'll chat about it. Obviously, they would have chatted about it. What Bruce was doing that was really rattling her and getting underneath her skin. I, for one, hope they don't figure it out.
More interesting. Let's keep it interesting. None of these blowouts. I want a close goal for goal match.
Talking about the Swifts, though, Pivot panel said the same thing as we did. Really, it's going to be a Swifts versus Fever grand final. They are the only two teams, now that obviously Janelle is back in the lineup, that are looking quite consistent. Not to say they're winning every single quarter because neither of them are, but out of the 8 teams that we have, those two are very clearly front runners. I want to put Lightning in that lineup as well, but I don't know. After this match, it's hard. We need to see Fever against Swifts now with Fowler in the lineup and the extra confidence that gives the entire team to get like a better idea of what it's looking like. But my God, I hope that this second half of the season, someone can beat the Swifts.
Please, just for entertainment purposes. But no, I do. I'm a bit like, damn, we've already, Fever have already versed the Swift, so they've already had one hit out against them. They're already going to be figuring it out. But that also being said, Swift's takeaways from that game that they beat Fever are not going to apply in this next game. So if anything, this is going to feel like the real first meet.
I feel confident to say that I don't know if the ladder's going to change that much, to be completely honest.
Yeah. And I think as well, the more that the weeks are passing and the games we're watching, it's almost there's a very evident divide between top 4 and bottom 4. And even in the types of game you watch, I find the teams that we're watching in the bottom 4, it's a lot more scrappy, higher turnovers.
When's Fever going up against Swifts?
Round 9.
So 2 more weeks.
Yeah, Swift's home game.
Damn it. How annoying. I'd want to watch that.
So, quick trip to Sydney.
Yeah, quick trip to Sydney. Oh, damn it. That's annoying. That would have been such a good home game to beat Swifts. Hey, let's quickly talk about the other headlines of the week. So we had Jo Harten release a statement on her Instagram, which is not something we see her do often. So this obviously was something she was incredibly passionate about saying. She released a post on her Instagram essentially talking about the scrutiny that the Giants have been receiving and how, I guess, she's obviously mincing her words and being very media trained in what she's saying, but realistically, it's because online talk can be vicious. The kind of accounts that we block, who just seem to be on a mission of absolute chaos and cruelty. And so to be on the receiving end of that, and especially being like on a team, the captain of a team that has been losing quite consistently, like I can only imagine how heavy that scrutiny must feel on your shoulders and the responsibility. So, and her specifically also being on the receiving end of a lot of that criticism. So I think it was a really necessary and brave thing for her to say. We saw Janelle Fowler-Nembhard reach 9,000 goals.
Wild.
Crazy. What a milestone. Again, just someone we're obsessed with. Like, she's just breaking records. Like, there's just no one like her. She's just so incredible. I mean, having said that, who knows? Maybe a young Grace Weke is chasing all those records.
So exciting to watch Janelle in her prime. And I'm sure one day when our daughters are older and they're like, who was your favorite netball player? Did you see her play? And we can say, yeah, we watched her when she was playing. Like, so I feel really privileged in that sense because she is one of the greats and she's probably going to be one of the greatest. I don't see her retirement anytime soon.
I mean, look how fit she is now and added so
Oh,
much more
she
movement to her game, which is something that we've spoken about since her first round that she came back into the season, was just her movement, everything she's added to her game and the options that she gives to the feeders. Like, she's just in a league of her own.
That's exactly what I just said in my head. I was a little bit disappointed that the milestone wasn't addressed during the game. I feel like it comes across just a little disrespectful. I feel like, give credit where it's due. This is a milestone no one else in the whole history of the comp has ever achieved. I feel like it should have been given the attention it deserved.
They definitely did highlight it in Pivot. And
Yes.
like you said, they would have had it in their notes, the commentary team. I definitely don't think it was like a deliberate thing to not mention it. I'm sure it was honestly just a matter of human error. And they definitely, made a point of highlighting that milestone in Pivot after.
Yeah, so I guess it was just disappointing that in the moment because it was definitely always going to happen. She was only 16 goals away.
This morning, we had exciting a baby announcement for Maddie Proud and a gorgeous photo. So huge congratulations to Maddie Proud and, of course, the Swifts family. And she's over in the UK at the moment. I believe her partner is there for work.
I think he plays cricket professionally.
We can't wait to see Maddie Proud back in the Swifts environment and getting little glimpses of her beautiful baby. I don't know if you saw this, Jenna, but I ran a competition this weekend.
I think I may have, yeah.
And so I just want to announce the winner of the competition to win a one-on-one private session with their SSN player of choice from the selection that was available. And the winner is Gabby Chomley. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Gabby. I will send you a private message to discuss the details of your prize, and congratulations. That's it from us this week. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, as always, let us know in the comments your thoughts on everything that we've talked about, on the controversy, on the drama, on the calls on court. We love to hear what you guys think in the comments so we can chat about it. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify and leave us a 5-star review if you have enjoyed this episode. Have an amazing week, guys, and we will see you after round 8.